On Saturday afternoon, June 24th, 1950, for the first time in the history of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, there were 4 Americans among the 60 drivers lined up across from their cars at the start. One of them stood out almost as much as his white and blue race car near the front of the line of cars. Sam Collier was wearing a business suit and tie, the brothers having decided that attire was appropriate to their Cadillac Coupe de Ville. Collier had checked and rechecked his mount to make sure the gear lever was in first, the handbrake off, and the door closed, and he took his position in the numbered circle across the track. With Cole on his left and Cunningham to his right, Collier might have been at home contending for the Seneca Cup at the Glen. Then all went silent, except for the sound of his own heartbeat, now pounding in anticipation, and moments later, the flag fell. Harold Osmer, Automotive Book Reviews. Twice Around the Clock, The Yanks at Le Mans by Tim Considine. This is one of my favorite books in the whole collection here. Mind you, I have several favorites, but this one has a lot going for it. Right off the bat, let's just talk physical, what we're dealing with here. It's a 3-volume set. Okay, comes in this nice slipcase here. I still have the plastic on mine, but so all 3 of these fit in here. I've got them all out because they fit real nice, and it's a little cumbersome getting these things in and out of there. It's broken down into 3 volumes. Volumes 1, 2, and 3. Oh, look at that magic. Volume 1 is 1923 to 59, 60 to 69, and 70 to 79. Now, Tim Considine passed away a couple of years ago, and he was in the process of doing volumes 4 and 5. Those have been picked up. That project has been picked up, and it's nearly complete. So that's going to be coming out, and that's another reason I thought it would be good to pull these out and talk to you about them a little bit. I knew Tim Considine. He was a very talented writer and automotive journalist and photographer, and just an incredibly likable person. He was terrific, and I liked him a lot. He liked me, so that shows you he was a good judge of character. Let's get back to Le Mans. I was saturated with oil. It was all over the windshield, and I had to wipe it off at least twice each lap. In the end, oil was being thrown on the front wheels, which is why I ended up nose first at Tetre Rouge. The first ultimate book on Le Mans was put out by Roger Lebrick, with illustrations by Joe Ham. 1949, Le 24 Hours du Mans. Okay? This is a year-by-year account with illustrations. I don't think there's any photos in this thing. And complete records, the stories of the whole bit of the Le Mans race up until 49. Look at his illustrations. There's one. We'll hold that up for you. That's a beauty. Whoop, turning the wrong way. Don't know where my camera is. That's okay. Look at that. Well, look at the size of this thing. See how big this book is? It's crazy. And this is 1949. Now, the Le Mans race started in 1923. Imagine how big a comprehensive book like this would be now. You'd be crazy to deal with that. So what you need to do, if you want to talk about Le Mans, and do a book on it, is you really need to focus on a particular point. My old friend Tim Considine did exactly that when he came up with Twice Around the Clock, The Yanks at Le Mans. Condebian and I drove that car the whole way thinking we had a fragile clutch that they never could fix, no matter how much they fiddled and examined it before the race. They never could get rid of that slippage, particularly coming out of Whitehouse. So we would short shift, and even then, in top gear, it would do it. There you go. Easy enough. A 3-volume set. You can still find these. There's a few of them out there. A little on the pricey side, but well worth it. And each one of these covers a certain amount of decades. The last 2 is the 70s and the 60s, and before that it's 23 to 59. Now, part of that is because from 23 to 59, there was only a minor American participation in Le Mans. And part of that reason just has to do with timing. First off, the race didn't start till 23. Okay. And the race typically is run early June. All right. So, well, it's difficult to get race cars over there and the top teams and all that sort of business. So, but you can do it. Heck, Jimmy Murphy won the French Grand Prix in 1921. Brought a Duesenberg over there and won that. So what's the big deal? Well, Indianapolis is the big deal right at the end of May. And so the top American drivers and cars and teams are focused on that as opposed to trying to get across the ocean in the 1920s, which took quite a bit of time to do back then. And so if you got your top car at Indianapolis, you're not going to have it in France. Pretty much this covers that part of it. Then you get through the 30s and 40s, and we've got the war years and all those sort of things. So American participation in the first part of it really was minimal. Now, I'm not here to give you a whole history lesson on Le Mans because that's what the books are for. The Le Mans course has stayed fairly regular at a little over 8 miles per lap, and it's out in the countryside, and it's a one-off deal, which is part of what I think helps Le Mans survive, is that it's just once a year. It's a big deal. It matters to the countryside. It matters to the people, and it matters to France. And the racing people can target it. You know, if they had a regular series going there, you'd need an actual racetrack instead of the road course. It's pretty cool. Maston got out of the car and said, "God damn fog, I can't see. With my eyesight, I'm afraid I'll run off the road." Rent was nowhere to be found, so Luigi turned around to me and said, "Get your hat and go." I only drove for 5 or 6 laps, I think. Then I came back in, Rent took over, and after that, I went to my car to get some sleep. What I want to do is talk to you about Mr. Considine's work and how thorough and meticulous a job he did with this. In focusing his attention just on the Americans, he was able to take a really deep dive into the topic, and a big part of it was finding the stories, finding the actual quotes from the early drivers. He was such a likable person and a talented journalist and photographer and the whole bit that he was able to talk to many of the more contemporary drivers. We'll call them contemporary, but they were still around. Dan Gurney, Phil Hill, these kind of guys, and actually get direct quotes and their own impression of what it was like to race there. Americans were not shunned by the French, but they were not as welcome as they may have been, but we managed to endure, and we know the stories of the Cobra Wars versus Ferrari and Shelby and Gurney and all of this. Okay, the first American involvement in Le Mans was at the inaugural race. There was a Model T engine in the Ford Montier, it was called. And so there was American participation at the very beginning. By 1928, a Stutz Blackhawk was in the race. And what happened there? The first U.S. winner, Luigi Canetti, in 1949. All right, now he was first American winner. I think he had a Ferrari. I'd have to look that up. I know exactly where to look to find it, though. So we have that. Well, since then, we've had over 300 drivers, 300 American drivers at Le Mans. And Considine does a terrific job. You'll notice in the images that show up there, there's a couple of times where I show the results as he lists, because he goes year by year and he talks the entire story. How the Americans did, where they were located, in relation to the other drivers. Did they win? Did they not win? What broke? What didn't break? This type of thing. And again, he's focusing strictly on the Americans, unapologetically, because, if this is just the Americans, imagine how big this thing would be without it. And I was very, very proud to have this book. I bought it from Tim himself when he was still around, and it helped him out by providing the other book with it. I didn't do much more than that, provide him the old Le Mans book from before. He used that as part of his model to make the book work, and you know, and do it all proud.
There could be no questions this time, no sniping about just who designed the car or who drove it to victory. The Ford Mark IV in 1967, the fastest racer ever at Le Mans, was designed and built in America. Period. It was powered by a hotted up American production car engine, the most powerful in the history of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And it set speed and distance record that would not be broken until the race course was changed. 135.48 miles per hour in 3,251 miles. And you couldn't get much more American than Henry Ford, Carroll Shelby, Dan Gurney, and A.J. Foyt.
The Yanks at Le Mans is a fabulous book. It's easy to read. Being an automotive journalist and a great storyteller, it mattered to Tim how it read, how it flowed. He didn't want to just dump a bunch of data on you, and that's exactly how this goes. The story reads like a story. He actually builds up the drama a little bit. He didn't come right out front and tell you anything like, who won the race and why, and that sort of deal. Nope. And you'll notice as I go through here in this review, and you'll see lots of pictures that are shown, that I just took a picture of the book itself. I didn't want to flatten this thing out on my scanner over here and do that, because I don't want to wreck this book. I really like this book. It's neat to read. You can pick up and read any given year and what happened and how the Americans impacted the races in France at Le Mans. And we've had a degree of victory there. We've had our share of defeat. And particularly in these first 3 volumes, which is a little bit more my favorite era, let's call it, there was more innovation going on. I mean, there's a lot of technical innovation today, no doubt about that. And the cars are superior in many ways today, but I think it was a little more fun era when they were confident that they knew what they were doing, but they really didn't know what they were doing in hindsight. So makes it kind of fun that way. The other part of this is I've got a personal connection with Tim. Like I say, we knew each other for 25 years. In fact, he was the outgoing president of Motor Press Guild, and he was one of the 3 guys that signed my card to get me into that 25 years ago. And he was always nice to the family and whatnot. So when I hold this book up and tell you that I'm really proud of it, yeah, it comes from the heart, as well as the actual physical work itself will stand on its own. And if you want a book on Le Mans that'll tell you the story and how it all happened and how influential the Americans were in this game, that's the one to get. That's Twice Around the Clock, The Yanks at Le Mans by Tim Considine. It's a 3-volume set, probably set you back a couple $100. I'll put a link down in the description there, and however that YouTube thing works, and you can find it that way. Autobooks may have one, I don't know, but you can always give them a call and find out. And there's some later volumes coming out soon, which is kind of what prompted this review, as this book has been out for a couple of years now. And Mr. Considine is also sadly gone. So, there you go. Don't miss your chance. Twice Around the Clock, Yanks at Le Mans. It's Harold Osmer, Automotive Book Reviews.